check. Can they hear me out there?
Yep.
Yes, okay. We're all set?
Yep.
All right, excellent. You will mute.
Yep.
Hello?
Yep. It's fine.
In this world that's ripped apart In this world that's ripped apart, there's a calling in my heart. Prayers for justice, prayers for peace. May we all have love and ease. Let's do it all together. In this world that's ripped apart, there's a calling in my heart. Prayers for justice, prayers for peace. May we all have love and ease. In this world that's ripped apart, there's a calling in my heart. Prayers for justice, prayers for peace. May we all have love and ease. In this world that's ripped apart, there's a calling in my heart. Prayers for justice, prayers for peace. May we all have love and ease.
Good morning, everyone. This Unitarian Church of Montpelier is located on the Western Abenaki land, which has long served as a site of meeting and exchange among these indigenous people. We honor, recognize, and respect these peoples as the longtime stewards of the lands of the Winooski River and the North Branch of the Winooski River, right out our windows. It flows nearby. In that same spirit, we commit to protect, respect, and continue taking care of the land for as long as we walk upon it. My name is Pam Walker. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm today's worship associate. It's wonderful to have Dr. Reverend Mellen with us again today for this special celebration of the legacy of Howard Thurman and Martin Luther King. We wish her farewell after this service for now, as Reverend Joan returns to us this coming week. We are very grateful to you, Reverend Mellen, for your many contributions, your wisdom, your calm presence, and your magical words among us the past weeks.
My honor.
Thank you. So before we begin, we have some very sad news to share. Michael Knight, the husband of Melinda Moss Knight, father to Jekyll and Avery, and son-in-law to Heather Moss, died this past week after a long struggle with cancer. A fuller announcement of his life is forthcoming, so we offer our prayers and support to Melinda and her family. On this cold, icy day here in Montpelier, on behalf of the worship team, I extend a warm welcome to everyone, to all those worshiping here and all those who are online. It's wonderful to be together again here. Since 1864, this Unitarian Church of Montpelier has been a sanctuary for those seeking spiritual sustenance, as well as peace and justice in the world. This church is a liberal religious community that welcomes all as we journey together in search of spiritual wholeness and justice in the world. We're so glad you all are with us this morning. So, a few housekeeping things. Please know we've got hearing assist devices available on the table at the rear of the church, the rear of the sanctuary. And you can also listen and watch the service in the fireplace room downstairs if you need to leave for any reason. If you have a personal concern or a challenge or a loss that calls for love and support, prayers, and a listening ear, a member of our lay pastoral Care Ministry team is available here in the sanctuary right after the service if you would like some support and to share with that person. Today, our lay pastoral caregiver is Denise Bailey. Denise, can you show us where you are? I hope you're here. Denise Bailey. If not, then someone else will be available. Just see me after the service. Where? Oh, Mary Jane. Perfect. Okay, Mary Jane Olson will be the lay pastoral care person this morning. So it's always a pleasure to have newcomers and guests join us for worship. If this is your first or your second time here, and you wish to do so, you're invited to stand or wave so we can offer you a special greeting. And anyone here? Welcome. Welcome. So any of you who are newcomers are invited to fill out our welcome form at the hospitality table downstairs in the vestry. And please join us for coffee hour so we can extend a warm welcome to you. So now we can all join in welcoming by greeting each other in the pews. So turn to your neighbor and say hi, and we'll move along. Do you want to come on up? It's wonderful to have so much enthusiasm. We need this on a cold day. Before we begin, Donya has a few words she'd like to share with us about the very special music we're going to be creating this morning.
Thanks, Pam. To help us honor Martin Luther King's legacy, we'll be offering several pieces of music this morning that either inspired Dr. King or were inspired by him. So I'd like to say a few words about them to give proper acknowledgement and respect to their creators, as well as some of the historical context. Our opening hymn is "Gonna Lay Down My Sword and Shield," also sometimes known as "Down by the Riverside." And this is sometimes incorrectly attributed to Pete Seeger. If you look it up on Wikipedia, it says by Pete Seeger. But it's actually an African-American spiritual dating from before the Civil War, sung originally by enslaved people. The name of its composer is unfortunately lost to us. The pacifistic words, probably referring metaphorically to a biblical passage from Isaiah, anticipated King's message of nonviolence, and the song became an important anthem in the 60s for nonviolence and the anti-war movement. Our postlude today, "Precious Lord, Take Me Home," which will be played by Eliza on the piano, was written to an old hymn tune by a contemporary of Dr. King, the gospel composer Thomas Dorsey. It was Martin Luther King's favorite song, and it was sung at his funeral by Mahalia Jackson. The prelude, which we're about to hear, is "A Change Is Gonna Come" by Sam Cooke. Cooke has said that he was inspired to write this song initially by his own experiences of racism, secondly, by the example of Bob Dylan's song "Blown in the Wind." He actually said, "If a white guy can write such an inspiring anti-racist song, why can't I?" And finally, by Dr. King's "I Have a Dream" speech in 1963, and he wrote the song later in 1963. It became an iconic song of the civil rights era and is on several lists of the greatest and most important songs of all time. Please enjoy this performance as you settle in to our prelude, turn off your cell phones, etc., with this performance by Heather Maas and Lindsay Wade.
was born by the river in a little tent. And just as the river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. It's been too hard a living, but I'm afraid to die, 'cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change is gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. If I go to the movie or I go downtown, someone keep telling me don't hang around. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Then I go to my brother, yeah, and I say, brother, help me please. But he winds up knocking me back down on my knees. Oh, there'll be times when I thought I couldn't last for long, but now I know I'm able to carry on. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change is gonna come. A change is gonna come. A change is gonna come. A change is gonna come.
Thank you for that. Lovely, lovely. Good morning. It is truly a pleasure to be with you this morning. It has been a complete honor to fill in while Reverend Joan has been on sabbatical, and I have invited you on a journey with me in this slightly more than a month that I have been traveling with you, and I have suggested that we are in a crisis, and that crisis is the crisis of our attention. Our attention is being pulled hither and yon by powers that want us confused and overwhelmed and fearful, and mostly they want us to waste our lives and buy junk and be addicted to their nonsense. And Howard Thurman, who was a spiritual teacher of Martin Luther King, said something to the effect of, if you don't get in control of your life, you will spend your entire life at the end of a string that somebody else is pulling. And here we are. And that string may be an algorithm someone is designing to keep you scrolling. Did you know the guy who invented scrolling can't live with himself? Look what has happened. Our attention. And what we know on the spiritual path is your attention is everything. That's your life. So I've invited you in my time with you to take back your life, take back your attention, take back your focus, because your life is precious. And one of the most powerful tools that we have to do this is to pay attention to who is it that we are following? Who is out ahead? As a profound spiritual example, whom you can model your life around. These are the prophets, the saints, the sages, the ordinary, wonderful people, grandma, grandpa, your aunts, your uncles, your mothers, and the great greats. In the time I've spent with you, we've talked about St. Nicholas and St. Ambrose and that Sufi St. Rumi, and of course on Christmas Eve, that great living example of Jesus himself. And today, in the wisdom of our culture, we set aside to follow, to remember the great example of Martin Luther King, Jr. And who did King follow? Jesus, of course, whom we celebrated on Christmas Eve. Whom did King follow? Howard Thurman. Have you heard of Howard Thurman? Great man, great man. So that's what we're going to focus on today. So hear these words from Howard Thurman. The deeper down I go, the more into him, with a capital H, him, God, source, the one. The deeper down I go, the more into him I find myself. None of the categories of classification, of faith, of belief, etc., have any standing in the presence of this transcendent experience. Because I think whether I'm black or white or Presbyterian or Muslim or Buddhist or Baptist, that in the presence of God, all of these categories by which we relate to one another, they fade away. All of these categories have no significance whatsoever, for in the presence of the source, I am part of God, being revealed to God. The deeper down I go, the more the external differences melt away. So I invite you to consider Howard Thurman as one of the greats whom you may follow and from whom you may find great, great inspiration. So you're welcome to join in our opening song, Gonna Lay Down My Sword and Shield. Thurman loved spirituals. He wrote a book on it. So this is totally in the spirit of Martin Luther King and Howard Thurman. You are welcome to stand in body or spirit.
Down by the riverside,
So, that was rousing. That was great. So let us now light the chalice, the symbol of our Unitarian Universalist faith, and we welcome Diane Marie to light the chalice. As they do, I invite you to light a chalice or a candle at home, just to bring some light into your space as we're bringing light to us here. We light this flame, an enduring symbol of our collective commitment to lead with truth and compassion. Thanks, Diane. Now let's join our voices in saying the words of affirmation, which I believe are in your order of service, adapted from L. Griswold Williams. And we all know this, but it's a wonderful, wonderful thinking for us to remember. Love is the doctrine of this church. The quest for truth is a sacrament. To dwell, prayer, to dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve human need, to the end that all souls shall go into harmony with the divine. Thus do we covenant.
Good morning. This morning, instead of me sharing a time for all ages, Reverend Mellen has a special message for the children, so I'd like to invite you all to come forward. Well, all the children or anybody else who wants to come, not necessarily all of you, but please come on up.
I've got it on. Yes, thank you. Appreciate it. Good morning. Good morning. Everybody knows what this holiday weekend is, right? Martin Luther King. That's right. That's right. And I have a story about him that I think you will especially enjoy because you're kids. So it's one of my favorite stories about him. You may know that one of the reasons why Martin Luther King is so important and so famous is that he fought for equality for people of all races. And that at that time, this was like 60 years ago or so, Black people could not ride on buses anywhere they wanted. They had to stay in the back, and if there were lots of white people, the Black people had to stand. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Hard to believe that people actually thought things like that, but they did. And so King was living in Montgomery at the time. He was a minister, and this woman named Rosa Parks, she got on the bus, and she was a Christian. She was a very devout woman, and she knew that she mattered. She knew she was worthwhile. And she was a Black woman, and a white guy wanted her seat, and she's like, no, I'm just going to sit right here because I'm a child of God. Well, it turned into a pretty big deal. It changed history. And that night, the ministers in the area, she got arrested for doing that. She went to jail. And the ministers in the area, they had a meeting to figure out what to do about all that. And King was at the meeting, and they decided to do a boycott. You know what the word boycott means? What's it mean, Waylon?
Like not doing something. Like they did a bus boycott. They wouldn't ride the bus.
Yeah, that's right. You got it, Waylon. Yeah, to just say, no, we're not going to ride. If we can't be treated with respect, we'd rather walk in the rain. We don't care. We're going to boycott. And so they did. And so that night, they had this meeting to get organized. They decided to do the boycott, and they created an organization called the Montgomery Improvement Association. And of course, the organization needed somebody in charge. Well, they looked around the room. There were just, not a whole lot, just some ministers there. And they looked around the room, and they said, Martin Luther King, you're our leader. Do you know why they chose Martin Luther King? You think he had organized a boycott before? Is that why they chose him? Nope. You think he was really old and wise? Nope. You think he had been in Montgomery a very long time and everybody knew him and they trusted him? Nope. He had just moved to Montgomery 3 months before. Do you think everybody, because everybody knew he was a really good speaker and they wanted him to be the leader, that's why they chose him? Nope. Why did they choose Martin? Of all the ministers in the room, they chose him. Do you know why? He was the new kid on the block. Nobody knew him. And they figured he hasn't been around very long, so maybe he hasn't gotten anybody angry yet. Maybe they'll listen to him because he's new. Maybe because he's a new kid, he's got some ideas. See, Martin he was just out of seminary. Seminary is the school you go to become a minister, like me and Joan, Reverend Joan. So this was his first job. He was a new guy. What did he know about anything? Just right out of school. And yet they chose him. They chose him because he was the new kid on the block. And maybe they saw a light in him. He hadn't proved himself. He hadn't done anything particularly. He's a new guy. But they saw a light in him. And they were right. They chose very well when they chose this new kid. And he became the leader not only of the Montgomery Improvement Association, the leader of the boycott, but the civil rights leader, probably one of the greatest in the history of the world. So next time you're the new kid on the block, don't worry. You've got a light shining in you, just like Martin Luther King did. And people who have eyes to see will see your light. And you can trust that you will be led to the right thing for you to do, whatever that might be. It might be something really big and famous like Martin, or it might be something simple and wonderful in your own life. So thanks for listening to my story of Martin Luther King. I hope I get to see you at the coffee hour over the cookies, and have a great time with Sally and your teachers. Thanks for being here. Thanks, Waylon. Bye-bye, Rocco. Bye, Rocco. Bye, everybody.
We're going to go this way, you guys.
And we get to sing to you.
So we have a few announcements. First of all, most importantly, Brenda Bean, who is representing the Fruit team, wonderful name, which is, does anyone know what that is? Flood Recovery UU Team. Fruit. Brenda.
Hi. I know that you can read the weekly announcements and even today's Sunday bulletin for this information, but there is a policy at the church that to inform people of possible chemical sensitivity occasions, we should make announcements from the pulpit. So what might not be obvious from the weekly announcements or the Sunday bulletin about the fruit update is that the work that's going on in the back staircase could potentially cause chemical sensitivities. So painting has already been done there with low or no volatile organic chemicals, but there may be some more painting. I don't think there'll be a problem with that. I haven't noticed any. But once further work is done in the staircase, the back stairs, the treads will be covered with vinyl. That will happen sometime in the next month or so. And it's possible that some people will have notice some odor. We've been told by Country Floors that also is a low or no volatile organic chemical process, but I just want you to know. Be especially careful on Thursday and Friday this week when our wonderful Brian Prendergast is going to be taking up the old wood on the stairs and putting down new wood so it will look better with vinyl treads on top. All right, thank you. Be careful.
Thank you, Brenda. One more announcement. The Committee of Chairs is meeting Tuesday, January 16th, 6:30 to 8:30, and all are welcome. You don't need to be a chair of any committee if you want to learn more about what's going on in the many working committees of our church. Please come. Now it's time for our offering, and generosity, as we know, is a spiritual practice that's central to our well-being and of our church community. It's a blessing and a privilege of our free church tradition to support the shared values of this congregation. Each month through the Community Pouch program, we share part of our collection with an important church fund or a community organization aligned with our values. And this month, as you know, in January, the Community Pouch recipient is the People's Health and Wellness Clinic in Barrie, which some of you already know about, but we're very happy this morning to have Dan Barlow with us, who's the executive director, has been for the past 3 years, of the clinic. He's going to describe the important work. Come on up, Dan.
Good morning. It's an honor and a privilege to be here and to be invited back again for the second year to speak with all of you and tell you about the good work of the People's Health and Wellness Clinic and to receive this financial support, which is coming at a really critical time, which I'll talk about in a minute. For 30 years, the People's Health and Wellness Clinic has used volunteer doctors, nurses, and dentists to provide free health care to people who either don't have health insurance or can't afford to see a doctor. That last part is one thing that has changed. We're seeing many people who have health insurance, but they can't afford their out-of-pocket costs, or they can't find a primary care doctor, so they're coming to us. It's the fraying of the social safety net, unfortunately, is hitting nonprofits especially hard right now. One thing that we are doing to expand our services is about 5 or 6 years ago, we added dental hygiene as a service. We have a part-time dental hygienist on staff who sees patients 3 days a week and does cleanings, x-rays, and exams. We are about to expand that program so we can start doing extractions for our patients right now. And right now we have to refer out for that, and that's expensive, and many of our patients can't afford it, and they're literally in pain. So we have to actually raise a little extra money to afford the additional equipment needed to start doing extractions at the clinic. So this support is coming at a really critical time when we're raising. Our goal is $12,000 so we can buy some new dental equipment and start providing this service. This also comes at a time when we've seen a 20% increase in patients needing care at our clinic. And I think it's no mystery that this is happening in the same year that 30,000 Vermonters lost their Medicaid coverage as well. And so we're seeing that impact at the free clinic. So again, your support goes a long way to literally saving people's lives right here in central Vermont. So again, I really appreciate the support of this congregation. I do want to apologize. I will not be around later this morning to speak with you. I did leave some flyers and some business cards downstairs. Feel free to reach out. I love talking about the clinic. I love having folks come to see the clinic. We're in a relatively new building in downtown Barrie. So if you're in downtown Barrie, please come by and see us. I can give you a tour and show you firsthand exactly what we do. So again, thank you all very much for the support. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan. It's good to hear all the details of what that important clinic is doing. So to finish, so thank you, Dan. So as we all know, half of our cash offerings go to People's Health and Wellness this week. The other half will directly support the church. And if you wish to designate your entire offering to the community pouch, please indicate that with a note attached to your cash or the memo line of your check. And checks will go to the church unless otherwise indicated. So you all know probably the pouches are already over in the aisle, and Peter's already collecting them. How do you like that? So thanks, everybody, for your wonderful generosity. And now we'll turn with Reverend Mellen to some meditation.
So we are exploring the life and teachings of Howard Thurman. We got a problem here. Shall I go with the handheld? Is it okay? Bryce and Carl are back there. I'll go with the handheld. You hear me? Perfect. Wonderful. Okay. So we are exploring the life and teachings of Howard Thurman, who was John Lewis. Remember Representative John Lewis, who just passed away a couple of years ago? John Lewis called Howard Thurman the saint of the civil rights movement. So Howard Thurman lived in the tension between the internal stillness and quiet and the life of public activity and service. And for Thurman was a mystic. As a boy, he grew up in Florida at Daytona Beach, and he spent many days of his boyhood sitting under a tree, talking to the tree, one of his closest friends. And when he wasn't doing that, he was walking on the beach. He especially loved to walk in the storms and at night and see the majesty of the sky, feel the waves, feel the power of that place. And in the power of the outdoors and his connection with the tree, he went to a very deep and quiet place within himself. He called it, when he grew older and became a theologian, he called it the inward sea. And he said, we all have it. We have this place deep within us of stillness. And he said, it's crucial that you know this about yourself. And when he was dean of the chapel later in his life, he exhorted his students to find the calm, to find that stillness, to cultivate a spiritual practice of meditation and prayer. That place of stillness, so that his students wouldn't live their lives on the end of a string that somebody else was pulling. That practice of prayer and stillness was really important 60 years ago, and it is essential now, dear friends. The chaos, the noise, the demands are even greater now than they were in Thurman's time. And the clarity to go out and serve in the world for Thurman came first from going within, from withdrawing. So I invite you now to a time of stillness and prayer. Do you have a spiritual practice? If you don't, please cultivate this. For Thurman, it was the oak tree and the beach. What is it for you? And whatever it is, go there regularly. Do it regularly. Find that balance between the internal stillness and the external service. I'm just going to give you a foreshadowing of where we're going with this. After the meditation, the choir is going to sing that piece that you heard on Christmas Eve, if you were here, when the song of the angel is stilled. Christmas is over, all the fuss is over, but now comes the real work. The kind of work that's going on at the clinic in Barrie, right? To help the people, to feed the people, to do what needs to be done, an act of service in the external world. So that's what we'll hear in a minute, the choir inviting us to recognize that, yeah, Christmas is over, and now the work of Christmas begins, of that activity in the external world. But dear friends, you will be absolutely useless in the external world activity if you do not still yourself. First, come to that place of stillness in your own heart. And from that, engage in the world. Do the work of Christmas. So let's have a time of meditation and prayer. The mind tends to wander around. Give it an anchor of your breath. Focus on your breath. Relax. Shake out your body a little bit if you need to, and just breathe. And when your mind wanders, just be gentle. Bring your mind gently back to your breath. Thank you for sharing that silence. Which is better, this? Cool. Okay. I think I'll just take this off then. Great. Okay. So, some of you, when I asked, do you know Howard Thurman? Some of you were like, yeah. And some of you are like, who's that? So I have some images, and the first one is of Martin Luther King. So if you could pop that up, that would be fabulous. And this is when he was the new kid on the block with the Montgomery Improvement Association. Just starting out, just out of seminary, fresh out of seminary. And one of the things that people said about him is that you could always find in his back pocket a copy of, next slide, Howard Thurman's book, Jesus for the Disinherited. That Thurman was King's guide. Thurman was a teacher, a professor, and dean of the chapel at Boston University when King was there. King was already working on his doctorate at that point, and Thurman actually went to seminary with King's dad. So it was a family tie. And what's really crucial to understand about both of them, and here's the next slide, is that they were ministers and Christians, first and foremost. If you want to understand Howard Thurman, if you want to understand Martin Luther King, they were Christians. They were devoted to the study of the Bible. I've invited you to consider, who do you follow? They were really clear. They were following Jesus. No ifs, ands, or buts. That's what it was about for them. And the next slide, here's King praying. The activity that all of the civil rights leaders did in preparation for any activity that they engaged in was stillness, prayer. It wasn't that they were protesting and they happened to be Christian. You completely missed the point and misunderstand who they are. First and foremost, they were Christians. They were living the teachings of Jesus. They were deeply moved to bring the work of Christmas, what we just heard, those were the words of Thurman, to bring the work of Christmas out into everyday life by bringing the kingdom of God on earth, by living the gospel. And the next slide, that's King from the pulpit, cross behind him to understand who he really is. And the next slide, please. I don't know if you can read it. I will read it to you. I shall not waste any effort in trying to reduce God to my particular logic. Here in the quietness, I shall give myself in love to God. So that place of stillness, that was crucial for Thurman. So just a little bit about his life. I'll say a little bit about his life and then show you a few more slides. So as I said, Thurman was born in Florida, and his grandmother, Nancy Ambrose, had been an enslaved African in a plantation in Florida. And she was the pivotal person in his life. His father died when he was 7 years old, and his mom went to work to support him and his two sisters, and so grandma was it. And she had no access to education. It was illegal for her as an enslaved African to learn to read, and boy, did she support Thurman. Not only to learn to read, but to excel. And Thurman actually was the valedictorian of every class he was in. So here's this impoverished boy from Florida. One might look and think, what's he going to amount to? his grandmother, Nancy, made sure he amounted to a lot. She used to tell him a story. When he and his sisters would get out of hand, she'd try to chill him out by telling him this story. And she said, when she was on the plantation, there was a preacher who would come around who was also an enslaved African once in a great while. And whatever the biblical passage, the preacher would always end with the same thing. The preacher would stand there in this little chapel with slaves, and he would say, "You are not a slave. You are a child of God. You are made in the image of God." And what Thurman said is when his mother, his grandmother, Nancy Ambrose, would tell that story, she would get really big and she would get tall. This enslaved African minister instilled in her, and she passed it on to Thurman, that you are first and foremost a child of God. Nothing anybody in the external world says about you has any bearing on the truth of your soul. Do you get it? And he did. And he went from the grandchild of an enslaved African to one of the most powerful people of his time because he listened to the stillness of his own soul. He went out regularly and talked to the tree. He went out regularly and imbibed the grandeur of the beach. And he knew who he was. And that internal sea was his home, that stillness. And from there, he engaged the world. So Thurman, against all odds, went to high school. He had to go far away to high school. There were very few high schools that took African American boys at that time. So he left home at an early age, and he went to Howard University. He decided early on ministry. He went to Crozier, and he got a job at Howard University as the dean, Howard University, African American College University in the DC area. He was a professor, but he was also the dean of the chapel. Pretty much an African American environment. Subsequently, he held almost the same job at Boston University, pretty much a white environment. He crossed the apparent boundaries. How did he do this? He also served, this is the church I want to be a part of, he was the co-founder in San Francisco of the Church of the Fellowship of All Peoples. Isn't that great? He had a vision. I forgot to say, he was born in 1899, and he died in 1981. In San Francisco. After he retired, that's where he went to. So he was a theologian, he was a mystic, he was an author. I brought a few of his books. He's got more than 20 books. Amazingly, he went to India, and he met Gandhi. And many, many people came to meet Gandhi. The story about Thurman is when Thurman arrived, Gandhi ran out to meet him. Gandhi never did that. And Gandhi plied Thurman with questions. And the big question, of course, was, is it possible to apply nonviolent resistance that had been so powerful and successful in India, is it possible to transport that and apply it in the United States? And so Gandhi and Thurman had really profound conversations in that time together. And at the end, Gandhi said, "Do me a favor," and Thurman said, "Anything." He said, "Sing me a song." Gandhi loved the spirituals, and he felt they got at the essence of the human power and the human struggle. And so Thurman's like, "Well, I'm not a great singer, but here we go." And his wife was with him and another couple, and they sang for Gandhi. And indeed, Gandhi brought back to the West the message of nonviolent resistance. And he taught it. A lot of the folks who would later become resistors were students in Thurman's classes. So you're hearing all this about him. You might think, well, surely he was in Washington at the protest. Surely he was in the streets. He was not. He was the quiet presence behind the scene. That's why maybe you don't know him. We all have different roles. Some people, our role is to be in the streets. For some of us, our role is a quieter role, not right or wrong. The point is to show up in the fullness of who you are and what you are called here to do. So let's take a look at the next slide, if you would, please, Bryce. So this is the window at Howard University that was erected in his honor, stating the years that he served there, 36 to 44. And let's take a look at the next slide as well. In the stillness of the quiet, if we listen, we can hear the whisper of the heart, giving strength to weakness, courage to fear, and hope for despair. That's stillness. I think if Thurman were here today, he would say, "You all are running around crazy, shouting and making too much noise, and just chill. Find that stillness." He would say, "Do you know about your inward sea? Do you go there often?" There's a couple of videotapes, interviews of him that are just precious. And in one of the videotapes, he says, when you go deep down inside of yourself to this place, this inward sea, when you go deep down inside of yourself into that stillness, you come up inside every other human being. That mystical place of stillness is universal. In that interview where he talks about this, he says, the way of the sociologist is to go like this to the other person. You know, I'm me, you're you, let me try to relate to you. Or he says, the political scientist, you know, me relating to you. He says, but the way of the person of religion is to go deep down inside into that stillness. And naturally, you come up inside every other human being. So you can see his effect on King. King spoke about beloved community as something that we create. King's method was the method of the person of religion, not the message, not the method of the sociologist, not the method of the political scientist. King and Thurman were Christians. They were people of faith. They were devout. What they did regularly, what they did before they did anything important, was get their ego out of the way and enter that place of stillness. Because the true unity is found in that stillness. Unity is not found by confronting the other person. Unity is found in the humility, the gentleness of entering that stillness, and of course, recognizing every other human being is also a child of God. Every other human being also has an inward sea. Every other human being has a purpose, a plan for their life. Everybody matters. So how could we not all be members of the Church of the Fellowship of All Beings? We are. We just forget. So let's take a look at the next slide. This is what I paraphrased in the opening. There is something in every one of you that waits and listens for the sound of the genuine in yourself. It is the only true guide you will ever have. And if you cannot hear it, you will all of your life spend your days at the end of strings that somebody else pulls. There's a story about an interaction between Thurman and King. You may know that King survived an attempt on his life in 1958. He was doing a book signing. He had written a book about the Montgomery boycott. He was in New York City, and a woman who had mental illness, she happened to be African American, came up and stabbed him in the heart. And he was hospitalized right there in Harlem, and the doctor saved him. Amazing. It was really close, but he came through it. So Thurman went to visit him in his recovery, and Thurman asked him a question. So, how long does your doctor say you should rest? And King answered. And Thurman said, double that. Thurman said, because this was right after the Montgomery boycott and all of that, and Thurman said, Martin, the weight of your responsibility for this movement is immense. You need stillness. You need quiet. In order to be a strong, clear leader, you need to disengage. Take care of yourself. You cannot serve the movement if you do not find your own wellness, your own rest, your own stillness. And King listened. And there's a record of a communication between them later where King writes to Thurman, said, I am taking your advice. So how about you? Are you overdoing it? Some of us are. Is somebody telling you, take a day off? If so, then take 2. We cannot really serve. We can serve from ego. We can serve from a political way of you and, what do you need and what should I do to you? Thurman and King say, no, still yourself, calm yourself. Touch that ocean, that inward sea, that quiet. And then from that, let your work proceed. That work of Christmas, which is to help heal the world in whatever way you personally are called to do that. So let's take a look at the next slide. We're almost done here. This is an image of Thurman talking to the tree. I love this one. And up above it says, there is something that waits and listens for the sound of the genuine in yourself. It's in you. It's in you. It's your birthright. King probably would not have been able to serve the way he served and be successful if Thurman were not one of his key mentors. It was a very demanding life for King. And Thurman was there to say, hey, pray, meditate, chill, listen to the genuine inside yourself, dear Martin, so that you can do the meaningful work in the world. So this is the final slide. Many people know this famous quote from Thurman. Don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive and go do it, because what the world needs is people who have come alive. So the way of going out and saying, oh, that's on fire, I better put out that fire, and what about this, and what about, that's how we get crazy and ineffective. And Thurman says, don't do that. Still yourself first. Listen to the voice of stillness inside of you, that inward sea, the voice of the genuine. See what it is that you're here to do, what makes you come alive, and then go do that. The world doesn't need another busy, crazy person running around for social justice, no. The world needs people who have come alive, who are deeply in touch with the stillness inside of themselves and are serving from that place of love and from that place of connection. So how about you? Are you living your life at the end of someone else's string? If you're addicted to your cell phone or your devices, you are big time. Time to exercise some discipline, time to get some help on that thing. Do you know yet what makes you come alive? If you get nothing else out of today, take that question. What makes you come alive? The world doesn't need another sorry saint. And who are you following? Who are your heroes that help you remember what really matters in life and help you come back to center? We've explored a few in our time together. St. Nicholas, St. Ambrose, the Sufi poet Rumi, Jesus, Martin Luther King, Howard Thurman. I invite you to identify your spiritual heroes, make an altar, put images of them up, memorize their prayers, their poems, their poetry. Bring them regularly into your life so that they can be your guides, so that you don't waste your life on being pulled hither and yon on the end of somebody else's string. Choose. Choose your path. Your life matters. Just as Nancy Ambrose, Howard Thurman's grandmother, said, you are a child of God. You are valuable. You are unrepeated in all of history. There will never be another you. What you do with your life matters, dear brothers and sisters. So come awake to the fullness of who you are. What makes you come alive? Go do it, dear ones. And do it from a place of connection with your stillness and your inward sea. May it be so. So it is. Blessed be. Amen. What better way to end than with the hymn, We Would Be One, Sibelius. It's number 318, or it will be up on the wall. So join him, body or spirit.
As we draw our service to a close, we extinguish the chalice and carry within each of us the healing flame, the warmth of community, and the spark of hope into the days and the weeks ahead. Please join me now in the mission statement that we'll say in unison. We welcome all as we build a loving community to nurture each person's spiritual journey, serve human need, and protect the earth, our home.
Dear friends, it's been an honor and a pleasure to travel with you these weeks. If you have found community here, treasure it. If you have found challenge, and I hope you have, then go and sit quietly in that stillness with what is stirring in your own heart. And if you have found hope here, bring it out into our beautiful and bruised world that needs you connected with what really makes you come alive. May it be so. Blessed be. Amen.